Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. The relations between the Russian Federation, its allies and the Western countries are getting worse and worse. We got report that Belarus is about to receive their first Oreshnik system. Oreshnik is already on its way. Lukashenko, the president of the Republic of Belarus, responded to the question of whether Belarus is being given weapons. Furthermore, according to information we have, this system is about to arrive on the territory of the Republic of Belarus because, for example, during the previous 24 hours, the Polish embassy in Minsk, in the capital of the Republic of Belarus, called on its citizens to leave Belarus immediately. Diplomats also recommend that Poles refrain from all travel to the Republic due to the escalation situation and ongoing military action in the region. So, this is very important if the Russian Federation will deploy their Oreshnik system on the territory of Belarus. I would like to remind you that currently Russia has just one test site. We are talking about Kapustin Yar test site, which is located somewhere here. And if we calculate the distance between this test site and, let's say, the western border with Ukraine, so the border with Poland, the distance is more than 1,600 kilometers. And for example, if we calculate the distance between the test site or launching site on the territory of the Republic of Belarus and the border with Poland, the distance in this case is less than 300 kilometers, which means that this Oreshnik missile will fly 5 times faster with the purpose to enter the territory of NATO countries. So obviously this is a very huge step towards escalation between the Western countries, NATO countries, and Russia and its allies. And we see that this escalation is happening right before the parliament elections that are going to take place in Moldova during the upcoming weekends. Today we got report that thousands of Moldovan citizens report receiving military summons from the commissariat in Chisinau. The sudden mobilization alerts are sparking widespread concerns across the country, with questions mounting over Moldova's security situation and potential escalation in the region. So I would like to remind you that this upcoming weekend there are going to be very heavy political clashes between pro-Russians and pro-Westerns on the territory of Moldova. Most likely Russia will try to do everything they can with the purpose to get the power on the territory of Moldova in their hands and to force the Western countries to fall back from the state. And we understand that the Western countries will never allow this. I would like to remind you that Zelensky also adopted the law that allows him to use his forces on the territory of other countries and different states. So we'll see what is going to be next, but obviously we are facing another round of escalation between the Western countries and Russia and its allies. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine, and first let's talk about Ukrainian attacks. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians destroyed another oil refinery which is located in the southern part of Russia. In this video we can see how some person from this region was filming the consequences of Ukraine attack, most likely with drones. As a result of attack, another oil refinery was heavily damaged. Most likely Ukrainians were attacking this oil refinery from the Black Sea. Ukrainians start using Navy drones for these purposes. They're getting as close as possible to the shore, and then they launched FPV drones from these Navy drones in the direction of Russian facilities, military facilities, oil facilities, energy facilities. And as you can see, these tactics brings very interesting results. So this is the situation. Another oil refinery was damaged. And as you know, currently Russia suffers huge problems with oil, with gasoline, with fuel. Lots of refineries were damaged by Ukrainians in the past during the previous several months. According to information we have, the prices for gasoline are rising in the Russian Federation, and telling the truth, this can lead to unpredictable consequences. And today another interesting and very strange episode took place in the Pskov region. A truck collided with a freight train at a crossing in the Smolensk region. The accident occurred this morning between the Rudnya and Galinsky stations, the truck driver crossed the crossings in front of the moving train. The locomotive and 18 gasoline cars derailed, causing a fire. The locomotive crew, the engineer and the assistant engineer were injured and in the hospital. Train service has been suspended. So as you can see, Russia currently has huge problems with oil, with gas, with gasoline, and we see that very interesting and strange episodes continue happening all over the entire territory of the Russian Federation. If you ask my opinion, I believe that this attack was planned probably by Ukrainian special forces or something like this. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously this is not a very good thing for the Russian economy. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia region. A very interesting piece of news is coming from this area. I would like to remind you that since the beginning of September, Russia attacked the city of Zaporizhzhia with FABs, with bombs, with aviation. If you remember, we discussed this situation during the previous several videos. The Russians were bombing the city of Zaporizhzhia with FABs, so not just with missiles and not just with drones, but with aviation bombs. And obviously using the aviation bombs brings Russians significant results when talking about destructions of Ukrainian facilities, military objects, and so on. And this situation forced the Ukrainians to bring their air defense systems very close to the city of Zaporizhzhia. And today, pro-Ukrainian resources reported that the Russian Su-34 that was bombing the city of Zaporizhzhia since the beginning of September was brought down by Ukrainian air defense. And if you remember, just yesterday we talked that Ukrainians were forced to bring their air defense system very close to the city of Zaporizhzhia, and most likely by this attack on Russian Su-34, the Ukrainians revealed position of their air defense system, and we projected that most likely as soon as they reveal their position, they would be destroyed very fast. And today, pro-Russian resources published this video. Here we can see the air defense system, the Patriot air defense system to the southwest of the city of Dnipro. The Russians discovered this position, and then the Russians attacked this area with an Iskander missile. As you can see, as a result of this attack with the cluster rounds, the Patriot system and the radar to the system were completely destroyed. So obviously Ukrainians lost a very expensive air defense system. The Russians lost just probably 50 or 60 million dollars, but obviously this is much less in comparison with the radar, with a radar and a Patriot system and the launching system itself. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro directions. If you remember, since the beginning of July, the Russians launched their major offensive operation from the settlement of Velika Novoselka in the western direction with the purpose to move in the western area, in the eastern Zaporizhzhia area, with the purpose to capture the Uspenovka fortified area, Poltavka fortified area, the Gulay-Pole and Pokrovsky fortified areas. So to move using these roads of attacks, and we expected that the Russians were about to begin clashes for several fortified areas with the purpose to move further to capture Gulay-Pole and Orekhov, so to continue their major Zaporizhzhia offensive operation. But during the previous 24 hours, we got very interesting updates from pro-Ukrainian resources, and they're saying that the Russian army has launched an offensive operation towards the Dnipropetrovsk region along almost the entire front line in this direction, reports a Ukrainian serviceman. The Russian armed forces have deployed a significant number of reserves not only to the Dobropolsky but also to the Pokrov sector. As a result, the enemy, means the Russians, several days ago launched an active offensive towards the Dnipropetrovsk region along almost the entire line of contact in this direction. So the pro-Ukrainian resources are trying to tell us that the Russians are not planning to move further in the Zaporizhzhia region. The Russians managed to get everything they need. The Russians improved their positions to the west, and now the Russians are going to change their direction, change the offensive direction sharply in the northern direction. So according to this resource, now the Russians are going to attack the Dnipro region using broad front line attack, and with the purpose to establish established complete control over the first defense layer, over the settlements of Novopavlovka, Ivanovka, Gavrilovka, and Mala-Mikhailovka. So once again, summarizing everything, the pro-Ukraine resources are trying to tell us that the next thing that the Russians are trying to do is to take under complete control this territory. The territory between the settlements of Udachная, the settlements of Zelený Gai, so this part of Dnipro region. And you know that this is very interesting projection from pro-Ukraine resources, because if Russians continue offensive operation using these roads of attacks, and if the Russians are tasked to take under complete control this territory, and if the Russians are able to capture these territories, this will lead to very difficult problems, very big problems for the armed forces of Ukraine in the Pokrovsk agglomeration, because using this foothold, the Russians will be able to continue offensive operation further in the northern direction with the purpose to outflank the city of Pokrovsk using much wider offensive roads. So this will allow the Russians to encircle and to finish the battle of Pokrovsk without reducing the city itself to ruins. So we will follow the situation. We are waiting for additional updates from this area. As for the previous 12 hours, we received just this video from the settlement of Gavrilovka, and here we can see how Russians were bombing farms and some facilities around the city, around the village of Gavrilovka, and as you can see, this territory was damaged heavily. It seems that this is something like an artillery preparation before beginning of another major offensive operation. So summarizing everything, we believe that in coming days and hours we will start receiving lots of updates from this area. The Russians most likely are tasked to move to the north with the purpose to take this pocket, and this will allow the Russians to answer an operational space. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk-Konstantinovka line. During the previous 24 hours, nothing special was recorded, just lots of attacks, lots of FAB strikes in the Shakhovo pocket. The Russians were bombing positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area. We believe that the Ukrainians introduced additional forces in this area, additional reinforcements and reserves, with the purpose to cut, the area of breakthrough completely, to cut and to encircle Russians. But the Russians introduced additional forces from their side, and now Ukrainians suffer huge losses. Now Ukrainians need either to begin offensive operation or to fall back towards more reliable and safe positions. As for the city of Konstantinovka, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the southeastern part. I would like to remind you that just yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation revealed the map according to which the Russians already established control over the southeastern part. But as for the beginning of the 26th of September, we still haven't received anything that can confirm Russian control over the territory. The Russians continue offensive operation, but we believe that in coming days the Russians will answer the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka, and then we're gonna see completely different story. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.